Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Arden, and today we're talking about a new series from DC coming out in July, Booster Gold, or I should say Blue and Gold, featuring Booster Gold and Ted Kord Blue Beetle, which is a pretty fun combination from back in the day where Booster Gold was created by Dan Jurgens, who premiered was one of the first characters premiered following the Crisis of Infinite Earths. And I think Booster and Ted Kord kind of came to represent the sort of style of characters that were focused on and used throughout that early period following the initial crisis, uh, where it was kind of in flux what DC could have been. And they kind of went for something very different to the more gritty direction that stuff had been going in the like Bronze Age of comics and stuff, and moving it towards something more adult themed, certainly, but also a little just flexible, we'll say, in how it works. We would have fun things like the JLI, which featured these characters, or stuff like Mr. Miracle, and there was a lot more humor involved. And we have a pairing like this, where there is a lot more comedy to it. While Booster Gold and Blue Beetle are just kind of fun characters that caught a lot of fan attention back in the day, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Eventually, though, all things change, and that version of Blue Beetle was killed off, or something, and a bunch of other stuff happened. There was a new Blue Beetle in the form of Jaime Reyes, who has his own fan base and is a popular character. Oh, excuse me. But and they would revisit this pairing of Booster Gold and Blue Beetle from time to time. Notably, like there was the tie-in Darkest Night where Ted Kord came back to life and Booster Gold had to deal with that. You also have stuff like in Heroes in Crisis, which was kind of teasing the return of these two. And now it appears to be the case in the form of this like limited issue miniseries. But it does kind of feel like the series that could run for a limited time for now before potentially being explored on a more long-term basis if it is commercially viable. There's tons of examples of stuff like that in comic book history where something just starts out as a mini series but evolves into something more. And where I think one can be most excited about this is the fact that Dan Jurgens is returned to write this story. So we have the creator of Booster Gold returning. He's working with an awesome artist named Ryan Sook, who we've covered before. Or Ryan Sook, I guess, is probably the more accurate pronunciation. But regardless, that's a talented artist I like, who I feel was unfairly paired with Bendis a lot recently. So I'm glad to see him back with someone like Dan Jurgens, where his talents will probably be put to better use. The preview images we see so far are all pretty standard stuff in terms of like superhero action and that sort of thing, but I kind of feel as though that's what this series calls for. A fun return to these classic characters we know, a good time to be had by all who, as we kind of enjoy this pairing back in form. And if it doesn't work, well, it's a limited series anyway, so it's just sort of an existing experiment. But with like Dan Jurgens has written comics in the last several years that have me quite confident he will write this with an able hand. His run on Superman books, his run of Superman books, were genuinely awesome, and I miss them. So when he gets his own little series like this with these two great characters, it has me pretty excited. Dark Light Prodigy, thanks for joining us in stream. The other stuff I've heard talking about it is just about how it is kind of interesting about whether or not like Ted Kord can kind of find his own audience, but I really don't view it as any different than the fact that there's tons of legacy superheroes and characters with access to the mantle in more than one way. We have a billion Flashes and so on and so forth, so that didn't really seem like a huge thing to me. But they were interviewing Dan Jurgens, and that seemed like the context of a lot of what they were talking about on Nerdist. I was like, okay, but we know that. And other than that, they talk about how like these characters have this legacy with the Justice League, and it fits well with the themes of Infinite Frontier. Memory is a thing, but I think also just, well, all those old stories are relevant. And even if you haven't read them, it's like, well, this was a really fun pairing from back in the day, and this miniseries should be a very self-contained way to glean into that a little bit. You have the writer from that era coming back to kind of tell this story with these characters, so it feels like he's coming at it with a firm, qualified hand. And he talks about how like Booster Gold and Ted Kord kind of stand out as characters, which I agree with. Booster's a very interesting and unique character that I think Jurgens really understands. We talked about him quite a bit for that 52 complete story thing I did, but there's more to him than that, and I'm looking forward to this as well. And then he compares them to like a comedic duo like Bill and Ted or Hobbs and Shaw, which I enjoyed quite a bit, and contrast that with like more traditional superhero team-ups, which is all very simple. It feels like we have plenty of examples of comedic duos like that in comic book history and even across the DC universe. For every Batman and Superman, which is what Jurgens is kind of contrasting it with, we also have stuff like Green Arrow and Green Lantern, or all the even Superboy and Robin are their own little thing these days that is kind of a unique characteristic. So beyond that, it's not like we know a lot about this series, but you can kind of tell why people are excited about it, because it's something that like fans fell in love with. It was taken away, and then it just becomes, well, do people feel as though like what about fans of Reyes, and like where is Amy at, and that sort of thing. So it'll be curious to see what DC's plans are for that character, for example. And I find it interesting because in contrast, it's just Booster Gold. Darklight says old school Blue Beetle. I think so, but unless I'm mistaken, that's Blue Beetle number 2. But it is, yeah, it's definitely Ted Kord, which is the second Blue Beetle. I wanted to double check that, but yeah, the original Blue Beetle was a Golden Age hero, Carlton Comics, and then Ted Kord was introduced with the Crisis of Infinite Earths, which is why he paired so well with Booster Gold. He and a bunch of other characters were kind of rolled into the pantheon of DC superheroes, which is how Jurgens refers to it in that interview, to borrow his phrase, around that time. And like I said, that time's characterized really well by its nice mix of like humor and I guess more modern characters, we'll say. Booster's a good example of that, because we have this guy who's not really that special. There's not much truly different or unique or particularly heroic about Booster. He's kind of just this ordinary guy with a lot of personal failings, and the only reason he's a superhero is because he's from the future. So all of his technology is just comparably, makes him like a much more advanced human compared to the average person living today. And I really like that idea, and I think it balances well with Ted Kord, and that really just comes down to how these characters are written and stuff. And Kord, on the other hand, is special and had to like invent most of his tech and stuff, so it feels as though like he's a good contrast, but he's not like a miserable straight man either. Well, I was gonna say, like, you really just have to see it to like understand what I'm getting at, and hopefully that's what this series conveys, because it's kind of a simple odd couple situation because of that, but it works well for this story. Now, Try3, thanks for joining us. I'm glad to see you. I haven't had you in a stream for a little while, so that is great. And Darklight Prodigy also printed a little cat in a box peeking out, which to me denotes excitement for Ted Kord returning, which is fun. I don't know if I interpreted that correctly, but we'll see. Charles says, what should I have for lunch? Well, I will happily share what I had for lunch. I even have the bowl right here, so you can kind of see the here, let me just... That's being noisy. I had some pasta with like this sort of Thai sauce I made, so you can kind of see the uh, orangey color I made out of it, which was quite good. But really, I was just using some leftovers because me and my partner tend to like we make these great meals, but her and I both have this failing where we tend not to like use all the leftovers and are throwing out a lot of food. So I was reusing some pasta in a creative way. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. I said Try3 also added that the suggestion of a nice turkey sandwich, but that is fun, and it works well because for people kind of living vaguely in my time zone, it is vaguely lunchtime, which is why that was there. I was eating it right before we started streaming. Darklight says Dan Garrett was the original Blue Beetle. Not sure I spelled the name right. That's correct. I did double check that to make sure I was right. But and then the third Blue Beetle is Jaime Reyes. What's kind of cool is both Ted Kord and Jaime have these big fan followings and stuff, and they both kind of found their audience. So I was talking about that a little earlier in stream, but I really do hope Jaime finds somewhere to exist. Maybe he is over in Titans Academy. I am not at all. I haven't read any of that series yet, but I'm curious about it. And and if not, then hopefully they find use for him elsewhere. Charles says he's great in Justice League, and that seems to be the angle they're taking here, where it's like, well, these are more older, experienced heroes that have both been in the Justice League at one time or another, and that is all relevant information at this point, so they're actually quite experienced, one could argue. And it'll be fun to kind of see that in action. Jurgens, the way he writes these days, is usually someone who's conscious of, okay, it's been 30 years plus since I introduced Booster Gold. Maybe I can, oh, actually it's been like 25 years or so. So maybe he's aiming to do something different. And I like, that's kind of the attitude he took with Superman, and it worked really well. So I am optimistic for a reason. Charles is saying vodka. I will have vodka for lunch, don't judge. Well, there you go. I mean, that's made from potatoes or something, right? Charles is saying, I will always remember Booster's episode of the Justice League. Great moment to learn how to be okay with your role in life. Hey, that's pretty cool. I don't think I've seen that, actually. As we were getting into the part of Justice League that everyone really likes in the cartoons, I was kind of growing out of it a bit and have missed a lot of those cartoons, even though they've been around for decades now. I've only kind of seen episodes here and there. But it's cool how Justice League Unlimited introduced people to a lot of these characters. And I do remember, now that I'm talking about it though, I do have a memory of seeing an animated Booster Gold in action at some point or another. So I might have seen that episode, which is great. Darklight says, can you please do a video on Hyperion? I'd love to hear lore on him. Sure. I'm just gonna pull up my notes. I mean, I make no promises as to when, but I'll add it to my list. The only people I promise when are like patrons and members and stuff, and that's a bit of a different story. Charles says he got a whole episode. Yeah, and yeah, okay, I'm starting to recall that now, which is great. And those cartoons are really solid for that. I do appreciate them for doing so, and they kind of are continuing that tradition on with these movies. It's getting to the point that there's so many of these movies, and they're all so reliable of a certain quality that it is a decent way to animate some cool moments from the comic books and stuff. And I am thinking of stuff like The Long Halloween, which I haven't seen actually, but like the Dark Side War Apocalypse business as well, which was totally awesome. So that's a cool way to kind of explore characters too. And I keep thinking of Injustice 2, the video game, where Jamie is the character in there, and or Amy, and I found that really kind of like that was really fun. But it's interesting when we are also doing stuff with Ted Kord, because he's a distinct and different character, to the extent that I'm thinking to myself, like, he could even be a completely separate fighter on Injustice and play differently, like from the ground up, and that would kind of be the only way to do it, because Ted Kord is so tech oriented compared to Jaime Reyes. So I'm not saying that has to be the way or anything, but it's just a fun consideration or something like that. And beyond that, I don't really have much to say. Series is coming out relatively soon compared to a couple of the other previews we've been doing recently, with it starting in July. So be on the lookout of that soon. I think it's July 25th is that it's coming out, if I recall correctly from the data I read. But, you can always Google that to double check, or like pre-order from your store if you want to, however you guys do comics. So, and I would recommend it because I think that would be pretty fun. Darklight Prodigy says, from what I know, Hyperion's first appearance in comics was as a villain, but aside from that, I know basically nothing. Well, the cool side of that is I already know it'll be like a bunch of different Hyperions and different versions of them along those lines. Some of the Hyperion we've seen most recently in Marvel Comics is not the same one as the version we saw during like the Hickman era of Time Runs Out, for example. I'm like 90% sure from what I've read on Twitter, but and maybe that got confirmed somewhere along the lines of Avengers and Heroes Reborn and stuff, but I don't know for certain. So yeah, we'll talk about that character. It's a good example of a character that is worth explaining and stuff because they're less well known and that information's still ongoing. So by the time I get around to it, like we can add in all the recent stuff with that character, as well as all the cool classic stuff from like the old days of Marvel and like the Squadron Supreme and that business, if I understand this all correctly. Darklight was saying also the new one we have is the massively retcon version. Yeah, but that seems intentional, right? Because that's their story. We don't have any of that flagged in this video, so I don't want to get into spoilers too much, but that feels a thesis of the character, so to speak. That they're kind of blank slates, which is good. That works. I don't feel like I gave anything meaningful away there, and I think beyond that, I don't have much else to say. And that was a fun discussion. So check out that series. I'll definitely try and pick it up, although my comic book situation is still a bit of a mess because somehow, like, the comic book store around here isn't quite open with Ontario and everything's a mess, so who knows when that'll happen. But hey, I'm fully vaccinated, so that's cool. Charles was saying, was curious if you're going to review TMNT Last Ronin. I haven't even heard about... Oh wait, I think I've seen like a preview image of that, but did not pick it up. But it's been a while since we've done anything Ninja Turtles, so maybe I will check that out and do some sort of something for you guys. Thanks for asking. I'll add that to the list as well. But why don't I do that off camera, because we're just about to end anyways. But Charles was saying it's a great read, so that comes well recommended. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for those suggestions. That's always fun to have future directions to go and stuff. My list of that is long, but there's some great stuff there. So until then, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time here on Comic Island.